thank you to all the speakers from East Asia. Very exciting. Also the music and cultural folk song from the country. Also different kind of experiences from the practitioner and also the academic, especially the question on the dioxin in Vietnam, which is also alarm us about the dangers of the chemical product that is also leave a lot of problem up to now. So come back to Southeast Asia, which is also homing for more than 600 million population. 30, 40 years ago when I was young, and I learned that more than 80% of the population in the country, in the region, in Southeast Asia, belong to the farmer and peasants. But it seemed that 40 years passed, and the number have been reduced up to only 30%. So something is also happened in a sense, but I'm sure that the mode of production is changed, partly because of the changing of the lifestyle, the modernization, and also a lot of the problem that is also happening in the last 30, 40 years. So now we have the three speakers together with us. One from the Philippines, from the Lumad and Indigenous community from the Philippines. The second one from Indonesia, peasant group, and also the third one from the Indigenous group in Thailand, from the northern part of Thailand. So we have 1 hour from now in order to learn what is happening in the Philippines, Indonesia, and Thailand. And if you have some question in between this, you can also jot down and also raise the question later on. So that is something that we can also foresee at the moment. The first speaker I would like to introduce to you, Ms. Katkat Dulong. Katkat Dulong from the Rumat Buckwheat School. We think understand that is a group of indigenous people. She be also accompanied by our friend from the Philippines, who is also the lecturer at the University of the Philippines, Jose Monfred. So may I invite Kat Daron to give the presentation or sharing of your experience, let's say 15 minutes.
I am Kat. I am a Lumad from the Philippines and the student of the Lumad Buckwheat School of Save Our Schools Network. For this evening, I will be sharing our stories. I would like to show the situation of indigenous Lumad peoples in Mindanao and what we are fighting for. Next slide. Lumad is a collective term for indigenous groups in Mindanao. We are 18 major ethno-linguistic groups, which include the Ata, Bagobo, Blaan, Bukidnon, or Talaandig, Mandaya, Manobo, Banwaon, Mamanwa, Mangguangan, Mansaka, Subanen, Tagakaulu, Tibuli, Teduray, Higaunon. And all these are composed of other sub-tribes. I, for one, am part of the Manobo, and my sub-tribe is the Obo Manobo. And while our languages and tradition are different, our elders united in a collective Lumad identity against the dictatorship of Ferdinand Marcos Sr. So, social services have long eluded our communities. This goes especially for health and education. We do not experience the enjoyment of our rights as Lumad youth and as citizens. We have been denied these rights. Next slide. This is why we form our own schools, our Lumad schools, which responded to the needs of our community, are beyond compare. Our schools are held together by 3 pillars. First is health, where from grade 7, the students receive trainings on health practices. Students know how to perform checkups, tooth extractions, circumcisions, and for many, even cyst removals and surroundings. And of course, we are also taught how to make medicines out of medicinal plants from our surroundings. All these we are able to apply to our community. Second is agriculture. For us Lumad, land is life. Our identity, culture, sustenance, and livelihood come from the land. You cannot ever part a lumad from their ancestral land. And because of this, we farm and plant corn, rice, and vegetables within our schools. Alongside a fish pond, we farm using organic fertilizers, and we study how to revitalize and revitalize land ruined by mining and industrial plantations. And third is academic. We study English, math, science, Filipino, and other subjects. Lumad schools are our highest form of resistance to defend our ancestral land, our life. And because of this, our schools and communities are attacked. Next slide. Attacks on our communities have been severe even during Aquino administration, but they have only grown worse during the Duterte regime when different form of attacks intensified. Our classmates, teachers, and parents are being killed by state forces. Just one example is Obelio Bayao, a Lumad student. Obelio was killed by paramilitary forces. Lumad who were armed by the military to avoid responsibility. The murderers have been convicted, but they continue to roam free within the walls of the army. Next slide. Many of our teachers, our leaders, and our parents have been detained. Teacher Julita remains behind bars despite the lack of evidence that she killed 13 Marines. Teacher Julita is a Lumad teacher. They are all teachers, not criminals. We, their students, are proof of this. Next slide. In 2017, Duterte threatened to bomb after his zona, and he did several communities of the Lumad. Many of us were forced to evacuate and leave our homes because of this. Next slide. Evacuating is difficult. We are forced to adjust to our conditions and surroundings wherever we are displaced. There is no water sometimes, and in other times, not enough food. There have been many incidents where mothers and newborns die from the exhaustions that evacuation brings. But even then, our refugees remain unsafe. Next slide. 44,760 individual, mostly community members, teacher and student were threatened, harassed, and intimidated. Next slide. The military is the military is violent, and there have been several incidents of torture, even of children. Some play dead while they are burned, then escape only to be chased. Until now, the burns appear fresh on their bodies. Next slide. 3,092 victims of forced and fake surrenderies. Why? Because the military comes right within our communities and schools. Next slide. Even though there are laws prohibiting armed forces from encamping in our communities and public infrastructures, the military continue this practice in our schools. Because of this, too many students remain unable to study, haunted by the trauma brought about by the violence of the military. Next slide. They have contributed not even a peso to our communities, and yet they have the gall to brag about destroying our hard-built schools. Next slide. 178 indigenous schools have been forcibly closed, and 5,579 students disenfranchised. There are 216 Lumad schools in Mindanao, and all of these remain closed amid the pandemic because the Department of Education denied permits despite complete requirements. That is because of the Executive Order number 70, the whole of the nation approach, where all government agencies, including the DepEd, the NCIP, and the Armed Forces of the Philippines, conspire to destroy our communities. They claim to go after terrorists, but we have become their primary target. Next slide. This is proof that we remain unsafe, even in evacuation centers. They continue to attack us. Next slide. Now, let's talk about their attacks amid the pandemic. Red tagging of volunteers and leaders remain widespread. Next slide. Some students were supposed to return home, but they were approached and allegedly rescued by the military, who were in reality harassing the students. CTCSM, or Community Technical College of Southeastern Mindanao, one of the largest lumad schools in all of Mindanao. CTCSM is my dream school and now was shut down. Next slide. The military that have encamped in our communities pepper our homes with bullets, leaving many injured. Next slide. Next slide ulit. Next slide. Oh, ayan. The red tagging of our teachers and our organizations, organization volunteers are beyond bad. Sir Chad, this is Sir Chad, and a teacher who was among those killed in New Bataan 5 massacre. Were 2 teachers, 1 community health worker, and 2 drivers were slaughtered. Red tagging is used to justify the killing of our teachers and other activists. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, red tagging. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, interrogation by NTF-LCAC during enhanced community quarantine. 10 students of Misfi Academy or Mindanao Interfaith Services Foundation Incorporated Academy was rounded up by the NTF-LCAC and village officials last May 10, 2020 in Tulunan, North Cotabato Province. Next slide.
At magdadag lang ako.
Sige, go.
Yeah, just to clarify to everyone who are not familiar with the term red tagging, it means that they are being accused of being rebels, and this will be explained further later why the government is trying to accuse them as rebels. And then the term you see here in the slide, the NTF-LCAC, it means the National Task Force for Ending the Local Communist Armed Conflict. So it's a task force made by the Duterte government in the Philippines to as a part of a counterinsurgency program. But part of it is terrorizing activists and indigenous students and teachers like Kat, and also the one shown earlier. One of our friends and teachers, Chad Book, was only killed earlier this year when they were doing community health work in Mindanao, and it was organized. The killing was organized by the NTF-LCAC. Sige, Kat.
Abduction of 2 students and their parents. Next slide. Destruction of school. The Mindanao Interfaith Services Foundation Incorporated Academy campus buildings in Sitio Laboron, Barangay Matupi, San Fernando Town of Bukidnon were destroyed by around 50 armed members of paramilitary group Bagani last August 26, 2020. Next slide. Bakwit School Cebu raid, February 15, the police and the Cebu City Social Welfare and Development Office arrested 26 delegates in University of San Carlos, Talamban, Cebu Retreat House. 19 Lumad students were transferred to the custody of the CSWD, while 7 adults have been detained at the Police Regional Office, Central Visayas. And so, why are killings and attack on us Lumad so intensified? So let's now try. If we look back to the history, the reason why Lumad schools have become the highest form of resistance is because our parents can no longer be cheated out of our land. In my experience, 100 hectares of land, imagine how vast that is, would be taken in exchange for a mere few cans of sardines and rolls of tobacco. They made our parents sign papers that they couldn't read. This is what they can no longer do, which is why resort to human rights violations in our communities. This is motivated largely by big mining corporations that corrupt our land, kill our people. The Pantaran Range is the heart of all Mindanao. Operations hence affect not only a one community, but the whole of Mindanao. What's more, the largest rivers come from Pantaron, including the Davao River, the Pulangi River, and many others. Next slide. Second, the vast plantations. These crops aren't what we need, and yet these are what's sold in our lands. Next slide. Third, logging. The struggle against Alcantara and Sons logging company was won by the Manobo and Pantaron. We had a pangayaw to defend our Pantaron, and in which we triumphed. Next slide. These are also the dams that the electric power drawn from them not benefiting the Lumad, but rather the large mining corporations and the plantations. Next slide. We march on. We built Lumad Bakwit School as highest form of our resistance. In the Bakwit schools, next slide. In Bakwit school, we join mobilizations because we know that the youth have the right to participate in such activities that would forward and protect our rights. We ourselves must move for our future because if not us, then who? We need to do this because we don't want the next generation to experience what violence we have and will continue to experience at the hands of the state. We study in the Bakwit school. We may move from place to place, but our education moves forward just the same. Next slide. We farm to prove to ourselves that we are not apart from our ancestral lands. Next slide. So see here, we do checkups. Now, go. What needs to be done? Educate, organize, mobilize. Now, what do we need to do attain justice? We tell our story as I do now. For us, sharing our story is also a form of therapy. We join protests because they are also avenues to let people know how we are and what we are fight for. It is not true that we are unafraid, not true that we are untiring, but whenever we reach this low point, we recall why we struggle, why we have much more dreams we need fulfilled, many more Lumad schools to forge and open, and much justice to attain. This is why we struggle. We know that there is something greater than our fears, the life of the next generation, our ancestral land. This is why we move forward. This is why I challenge all of you here to join us. We call the Move for Justice. Please feel free to leave questions to be answered later. Thank you for listening. Paragaski.
Thank you so much, Kat, for your wonderful presentation. But the story you tell us is so sad because also caused by the militarization, also the question of the discrimination against people, especially from different regions and nationalities. And of course, that is also affected to the civil liberty and civil and political right. Of course, including the right to education that your school have been affected. And when the last part of your presentation, you also mentioned about some sort of the profit making, especially the mega project like the dam construction, the mining question is also the logging, which is also making the profit to somebody who hold the powers in the country and the region. Of course, using in the name of the national security. That is also sounds similar to some other country as well. So now we go to the second speakers from Indonesia. May I introduce you, Yani Srimulyani from Serikat Petani Pasundan from Indonesia. She's going to speak about the creation of the struggle for accurate reform and the current project that they have been implemented. So, Yani, the floor is yours. You have 15 minutes to go.
Pertama, saya akan menjelaskan terkait sekilas sejarah Serikat Petani Pasundan. Serikat Petani Pasundan itu diawali oleh gerakan Forum Pemuda Mahasiswa Pelajar di Kabupaten Garut. Jadi lahirnya Serikat Petani Pasundan itu dibidani oleh PPMG, Forum Pemuda Pelajar Mahasiswa Garut. Ini merupakan sejarah perjalanan Serikat Petani Pasundan ya. Serikat Petani Pasundan dimulai dari tahun 89, mulai didirikannya Forum Pemuda Pelajar Mahasiswa Garut. Lalu juga tahun 95 itu juga ada kita membentuk satu organisasi yang namanya YPMAS, satu forum yang untuk supporting sistemnya SPP. Nah, di tahun 98 sampai tahun 99 juga SPP juga disupport oleh kawan-kawan Forum Pemuda Pelajar Mahasiswa yang ada di Tasik maupun yang di Ciamis. Nah, ini peta wilayah sebaran Serikat Petani Pasundan. Serikat Petani Pasundan tersebar di 4 kabupaten, 1 Kabupaten Garut, Kabupaten Tasik, Kabupaten Ciamis, dan Kabupaten Pangandaran. Ini berada di wilayah Tatar Pasundan yang ada di wilayah Jawa Barat. Nah, saya mau menyampaikan terkait soal visi misi Serikat Petani Pasundan. Jadi yang pertama, visi misinya SPP itu satu, bagaimana membangun tatanan sosial kehidupan sosial, ekonomi, politik yang berlandaskan asas dan nilai kemanusiaan, keadilan dan ketuhanan. Misinya bagaimana mewujudkan anggota SPP menjadi agen perubahan sebagai pelopor perbaikan di daerahnya masing-masing, termasuk perbaikan dalam diri, dalam meningkatkan kesejahteraan ekonomi, politik, dan sosial. Juga bagaimana membangun partisipasi aktif dalam pembuatan dan pelaksanaan kebijakan politik, terutama di tingkat desa. Ketiga, juga memelihara fungsi optimalisasi lingkungan hidup untuk pemenuhan kebutuhan manusia dan ekosistem lainnya secara adil, layak, dan berkelanjutan. Jadi tadi itu di perjalanan SPP itu visi misinya itu seperti itu. Nah, tadi di tahun 95 PPMG telah melahirkan yang namanya yayasan PEMAS ya, namanya Yayasan Pengembangan Masyarakat, yang mana sebagai subunitnya SPP, dan sampai sekarang SPP lahir merupakan satu organisasi petani yang miskin dan menderita. Jadi kemiskinan dan penderitaan petani itu disebabkan karena memang tidak memiliki lahan yang cukup untuk bertani. Dan tadi juga sudah disebutkan di sejarahnya SPP itu bahwa di tahun 98-99 SPP mempunyai organ pendukung dari Garut, mulai PPMG, PMR, dan farmasi di 3 kabupaten. Dan di tahun 2000 itu tadi sejarah SPP mulai dideklarasikan, mulai dinamakan namanya Serikat Petani Pasundan yang dimotori oleh beberapa tokoh petani, aktivis, dan pemuda di Garut. Nah, SPP fokus pada isu reforma agraria. Jadi reforma agraria itu bagi SPP didasarkan pada tanah untuk rakyat, yang merupakan bagaimana cara bagi setiap petani untuk bisa memiliki, menguasai, dan menggarap serta memelihara kelestarian alam yang menjadi sumber kehidupannya. Nah, ada beberapa proses ini ya utama terkait soal land reform. Jadi land reform bagi SPP merupakan yang pertama itu satu redistribusi tanah kepada penggarap. Jadi dengan adanya redistribusi tanah itu untuk petani, baik petani kecil untuk bercocok tanam, kedua juga bagaimana bisa meningkatkan pelayanan alam sebagai upaya untuk menjaga keseimbangan alam supaya alam menjadi tidak rusak. Dan ketiga bagaimana pengaturan produksi bersama untuk menjamin peningkatan produksi. Jadi penataan produksi itu merupakan satu usaha untuk menata kembali jenis-jenis produksi yang akan diproduksi untuk dikonsumsi dan didistribusikan setiap petani untuk dimilikinya, mengusahakan dan memelihara kelestarian alam yang menjadi sumber kehidupannya. Nah, di SPP itu juga ada peran perempuan, di mana kedudukan peran perempuan di dalam SPP itu sangatlah penting. Karena perempuan mempunyai tanggung jawab yang sama bersama laki-laki di dalam melaksanakan perjuangan reforma agraria. Dan pembagian peran dan tanggung jawab itu ya harus serius sebagai langkah awal menuju masyarakat yang adil dan demokratis. Jadi peran perempuan itu sangat besar, mulai dari penguasaan lahan hingga penataan produksi dan upaya mempengaruhi kebijakan baik di tingkat desa maupun di tingkat nasional. Dan keterlibatan perempuan tidak hanya dalam hal penggarapan lahan, tetapi juga dalam kegiatan organisasi mulai dari pendidikan hingga pengambilan keputusan. Dan munculnya tokoh-tokoh perempuan di SPP ataupun di desa-desa itu merupakan satu keharusan buat di SPP. Nah, terus ada asas inti dan terkait soal strategi SPP, di mana ada beberapa hal yang memang dijadikan inti semangat dari perjuangan SPP. Bagaimana mulai dari perasaan senasi, perasaan munculnya pentingnya rasa solidaritas, persahabatan, juga rasa nilai-nilai perjuangan itu menjadi semangat perjuangan yang memang terus-menerus dibangun oleh SPP. Dan fokus kegiatan SPP selama ini yang pertama satu melakukan kerja-kerja advokasi penguasaan tanah negara oleh dan untuk rakyat. Dua, advokasi kebijakan politik reforma agraria. Tiga, pendidikan politik dan kepemimpinan bagi petani dan masyarakat agraris lainnya. Empat, peningkatan pelayanan alam dan pengaturan produksi bersama. Dan lima, menumbuhkan kemandirian dan membangun usaha ekonomi bersama. Nah, yang lainnya adalah SPP juga mempunyai sistem pendukung regenerasi dan juga melakukan satu unit pelayanan buat para pimpinan SPP, anggota-anggota SPP. Yang pertama sistem kaderisasi mulai dari satu unit pendidikan. Satu unit pendidikan ini terbagi dua, baik pendidikan formal maupun pendidikan yang non formal. Nah, satuan pendidikan formal ini pada awalnya didirikan untuk memenuhi kebutuhan pendidikan anak-anak petani dan untuk menjadi regenerasi anggota muda Serikat Petani Pasundan. Sebagai contoh, SPP saat ini sudah membangun sekitar kurang lebih 13 sekolah, mulai dari sekolah tingkat SD, SMP, SMA di beberapa daerah di basis SPP. Lalu juga satu unit pendidikan non formal itu SPP juga mempunyai satu institut kepemimpinan desa dan agraria itu yang diberikan untuk para pimpinan-pimpinan SPP yang ada di beberapa OTL atau di beberapa basis daerah dan SPP. Serta SPP juga memberikan unit pelayanan hukum, di mana unit ini dibangun dengan tujuan untuk memberikan pelayanan kepada anggota SPP di dalam menangani persoalan-persoalan masalah hukum. Nah, sehingga dari unit-unit sistem pendukung yang SPP dirikan selama ini, Sehingga itulah yang membuat kerja-kerja SPP senantiasa bisa terus berjalan dan bisa terus bertahan sampai sekarang. Nah, sebagai contoh, misalkan di situasi pandemi, apa yang dilakukan oleh SPP dalam menangani pandemi yang kurang lebih selama ini hampir mau masuk 2 tahun lebih ya, 2 tahun lebih. Karena prinsip SPP asas yang dijunjung tinggi, bagaimana menumbuhkan solidaritas, bagaimana menumbuhkan rasa persahabatan antara masyarakat di desa dengan di kota. Dengan beberapa multisektor, SPP telah membangun satu gerakan solidaritas, melakukan penggalangan logistik itu untuk diberikan kepada kaum masyarakat miskin kota. Di samping itu juga SPP juga telah membangun satu posko-posko untuk penanganan COVID beberapa masyarakat yang terkena dampak COVID, sehingga SPP mempunyai posko dan melakukan satu pelayanan penanganan buat masa selama pandemi. Nah, lalu juga SPP membangun kerjasama dengan kawan-kawan buruh di kota dan juga dengan masyarakat miskin kota. Kira-kira apa yang bisa dibantu oleh petani maupun apa yang bisa diberikan oleh petani terhadap buruh, karena memang di masa pandemi ini banyak masyarakat buruh yang terkena di PHK, banyak masyarakat miskin yang kekurangan pangan, yang tidak bisa mendapatkan pangan, sehingga SPP membantu di situ untuk kebutuhan pangan. Nah, sementara selama ini kan solidaritas yang dibangun oleh SPP itu lebih pada banyak misalkan acara, aksi, aliansi, demonstrasi. Nah, tetapi di masa pandemi ini lebih kepada bagaimana SPP membangun dengan sektor yang lain, dengan masyarakat miskin kota, itu membangun satu gerakan solidaritas, gitu, membangun gerakan solidaritas. Pemenuhan kebutuhan pangan buat kawan-kawan masyarakat di kota maupun di di sektor buruh, masyarakat adat maupun masyarakat sektor lainnya. Itu sekilas dari apa yang dilakukan oleh SPP dan juga sekilas sejarah perjuangan SPP, termasuk dengan apa program-program kerja-kerja advokasi yang dilakukan oleh SPP. Selama ini SPP memang fokus pada isu reform agraria, dan sampai hari ini SPP terus bertahan dan SPP terus melakukan satu penguasaan, pengelolaan dan kepemilikan penguasaan tanah. Sampai hari ini masyarakat masih mampu bertahan dan menguasai dan mempertahankan tanah yang selama ini diperjuangkan. Dan dari hasil perjuangan tersebut, SPP mampu membangun satu nilai-nilai kemandirian, kemandirian ekonomi, dan mampu memberikan kontribusi, mampu memberikan juga membantu kepada masyarakat-masyarakat di luar yang memang masyarakat yang masih banyak tidak memiliki lahan. Nah, ini slide terakhir, ini merupakan generasi muda Serikat Petani Pasundan yang pada saat itu ikut terlibat dalam aksi demonstrasi di dalam mendorong kebijakan terkait soal reform agraria. Saya pikir saya dicukupkan sampai di sini presentasinya. Semoga bahan presentasi ini bisa kawan-kawan semua bisa dibaca karena ada teks yang menggunakan bahasa Inggris. Sekian dan terima kasih. Selamat malam, salam sejahtera, hidup petani, hidup masyarakat adat, hidup masyarakat miskin kota, hidup semuanya.
Thank you so much, Yani, Srimulyani from the Serikat Petani Pasundan. Yeah, actually the English name is the Pasundan Peasant Union. No, actually even though I cannot understand every word you're speaking, but looking from the slide and your presentation, it sounds very, very encouraging, because your peasant union will be one of the very interesting case study for others to learn. From what I heard, the SPP is the organization set up in 1995 by a group of young people, and that become the seed of democracy also grow up to be the movement for accurate reform afterward. So if you have any question to ask, especially for the participant, then you can also type down in the chat box. Then we will also raise the issue to discuss later on. So the next speakers will be from Thailand, Kun Nittaya Iakana. She's the director of the Impact Association. Impact is an acronym of the Intermountain People Education and Culture in Thailand. So Nittaya, we also talking about the experience on the co-organizing or co-participating in management of the natural resources in the northern part of Thailand, especially run by the indigenous people in the north. So Nittaya, the floor is yours. You have 15 minutes to go.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nittaya Iakana, or you can call me Me. Me is my ethnic name. I'm come from the Hmong indigenous community from the northern of Thailand, and I working with the indigenous organization also, which was formed by the indigenous youth, and who was for a lot of struggle and problem in especially in the northern of Thailand. So today I will present only a few parts that we have been facing and working on that issue. So can somebody help to share the screen? So I'll just give you a brief information about the indigenous people in Thailand. Actually, there are more than 60 indigenous groups in Thailand, but actually there are around 45 groups that are self-identified as indigenous peoples. But however, the government are not recognized as indigenous people. They, even though they are recognized, they already endorsed the UN RIP already, but they still not recognize that we are indigenous people in Thailand. And the number of is around 4 million people of indigenous people. And actually, we are mainly living in the forest area. I will show you the map here. I think last time I already presented you about the diversity of indigenous people where we are living. So the left-hand side is the diversity and the place that we are living. Indigenous people, we are living in different color there. And you also see that in another map is talking about the green color or talking about the biodiversity. So you can see that a lot of forests are in the area of indigenous people, in the area of our homeland. So around 27% of the forest area are in our homeland, and in that number, 80% of the biodiversity in also located in our indigenous communities also. However, as you see that right now our government, they are trying a lot to increase the number of the forest area, and in the coming next 10 years they will create up to 40%. So the 40% they will get from our indigenous community land. And right now they try to declare more area to be the protected area and also the national park area also. So we are facing a lot of problem on that. So I would say that for our indigenous people, and I think in other countries also, we have the very close relation to the land and the natural resources. Because we are living, we have the nature, we have belief in our ancestor and very close relationship with the land there. So we can see that our territory in the northern of Thailand, including in the western part of Thailand, occupy over 80% of our biodiversity and rich in the natural resources also. And our indigenous people, we have very, very deep spiritual, cultural, and social and economic connection with our land and territories also. In the picture I'll show you here, I think many of you already have experience and see already. This is the one of the traditional agriculture system we call rotational farming. And actually for our practice, we can rotate our land for up to 7 or 8 years. But right now, due to the issue of a lot of policy on the land use, So we are limited to only 1 year and 2 year only. That's why create a lot of problem and limit us to access to the natural resources also. And like one of our the presentation presenting about the situation on the pesticide. No? There are a lot in the farmland. I think that from our experience and our study, we found that our traditional practice on the rotational farming can protect from the wildlife, because we are not only plant for the human only, but we also plant the products for the wildlife. And we have plant a lot of plant there. For example, in one land plot, there are more than 100 different kind of plant have been planted there. So some food provide for the animal and some food provide for the human. So that's why that is not the problem, that we are living together with the with the animal and with the insect like that. We can living together also. And this is one of our practice on the traditional. We also have the ceremony connection with the land. Before we planting, we have to do the ceremony to how to say, to worship for our ancestor and ask our ancestor to protect our product like that. And we also have system to manage the natural resources. For example, before the fire season, we have to do the fire break to protect the fire entrance to our forest area. We had a ceremony to collect the honey, and we believe that not collect all, but we collect only few for the family only. And we also, yeah, you see that here we have a ceremony, the connection to our land and spirit also. So this is I will show you some of the products that we have found from the rotational farming. That this is that the variety of the food and plant that have been collected. Right now is a lot of plants that have been disappeared already, because when we forced to not allowed to rotate the land plot up to 8 years like before, some plant cannot be planted in those conditions. So that there are the recent find that those kind of plant cannot be found. And we have we also forced to plant some of the some seed that are from the company. So that's why many of our local seeds disappear. And yeah, during the 1944, the state have been issue a lot of law and policies related on the forest and land use, especially on the natural forest, on the National Forestry Act, Wildlife Preservation and Protection Act, National Park, and also the Reserve Forested Act. And those 4 acts are the main reason that we are not able to access to our land. We are our community customary land tenure rights were ignored, including our traditional occupation had been limited, suspended also. For example, the rotational farming are not allowed and not accepted by the government now also. And also created the conflict, even though inside the community, among the community, and also between the highland people and the lowlander people also. They have a lot of conflict after that. And also lack of the life security and also the food security also, because people are more dependent on the outsider. They are trying to plant the cash crops, so people are more have to buy the food. They have to sell the product, and in order to earn the money to buy the food for them. So the livelihood are totally changing already. And we also have the problem that we have limited involvement of the stakeholders when government are implementing some activity or develop plan project in our area. We have lack of involvement on those kind of the project also. So that's why we are trying to encourage to have the project in order for us to co-management the area together. So more than 10 years ago, that we together with the National Park of Luang National Park, we have received the funding from the Danida, and impact we are a part of this project also to conduct the activity to how to say promote the involvement of local people in the management of forested area. In this project, we aim to promote participatory management of the protected area, and also establish the joint management of protected area modules in order for the other place to learn, and also to enhance the capacity of the leaders and also the local organization also. And the key principle that we are try to approach during we implement this activity. The first one is the participatory approach that we are really this is very important for implement the activity, because the local people are the main one who will impact from this project. And the other thing that, because we believe that our traditional knowledge are very friendly with the how to say, friendly with the natural and environment, and also it is the sustainable way also. So we have to combine between the traditional and modern knowledge also. And yeah, next slide please. So this project we are implementing is in the of Luang National Park in Chiang Mai province. And as you know, that Chiang Mai province is the province that the most diversity of indigenous people in Thailand are in Chiang Mai, and Ob Luang is a place that have a indigenous people. We are living there. A lot of a high number of indigenous people are living there also. And though in this area, during last 10 years, there are a lot of conflict. After they declared this area to be the national park and limit the access of the area, so the people are totally changed the livelihood to be more depending on outside. That's why conflict happen between the highland people and lowlander communities in the issue of the water, the using of chemical like that, and also the lack of the joint management mechanism they don't have, and also the government, the local government ignore the indigenous people structure also, and they're not allowed to involve, and lack of collaboration between the community and local government agencies. And the regulation of the national park on the land and resource use also very strictly. We are not able to how to say, access to the land and practice the rotational farming as well. And also during that time, the forest fire happened a lot in the national park and spread into the indigenous farming area a lot also. And the other thing is the expansion of the agricultural area into, and some people are also collecting the forest product, and some of the people or the villagers are arrested and prosecuted also. These are the projects that are very, very challenging for us, because we need we need to work closely with the national park in order to have some mechanism with the community to work together. So that's why we have to talk a lot with the national park, talk a lot with the local authority. So yeah, you can go to the next slide. And we have to have the process to work a lot in the community in order for the community, they are able to analyze the situation, to develop the capacity for the leader to demarcate the land, to develop the mapping by themselves, to collect the indigenous knowledge, and also to how to say, to are able to do the negotiation with the local authority also. So we spent a lot of more than 1 year to do this process with the community leaders, and also with the local authority and national park. And finally, we can get the community mapping, the regulation, and yeah. So here is just the process that we are building, understanding, and collecting information. We are doing together with the national park staff, officials and staff, because if we are doing individual by ourselves, it will not acceptable by them. So they have to be involved in all process. And finally, yeah, after we have done this project, the relation between the lowlander people and the highland people are the conflict are more reduced, and we can now the network in the watershed level we are established, and they set up the mechanism to work together in order to solve the problem. And the community leader, they are able to play a very important role in the to be the accountant to the committee of the protected area. So in every activity or in every meeting they are talking or made a decision, they have to invite the community member to involve and involve in the decision making also. So I think this kind of things are very important, and it is the good lesson learned that we should how to say expand to the other community and other national park also. However, it is very pity and that there's no national park, no other national park that will convey this kind of knowledge to transfer into the other national park. So the knowledge just only this kind of place just only implement in the Oblong National Park. And for our organization, right now we try to bring this kind of model to expand into the other nine watershed area, and we really hope that in the future those kind of model will spread more into throughout our indigenous community, and it will be the one kind of to solve the problem. Even though the government law are not acceptable, but in the local level they are allowed and acceptable. So I think this kind of will be slowly to voice our to raise our voice and also to change in the community level also. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Nittaya. So you can see that we have 3 wonderful presentations from the young panelists from Southeast Asia. So we have around 8 minutes left for our session. So that is also the time for question and answers. I observed that in the chat box there is a question referring to cat. No? I think our friend have raised the question that is there any thought in collaborating with the people outside Mindanao to strengthen your what's that? Your tie outside Mindanao, and also to bring more right to the issue. So Kat,
Narinig mo yung tanong?
raise the question or Mon want to highlight?
Yes, Boon, I'll be translating for Kat. Kat, tinatanong kung naisip na daw ba natin magkaroon ng mga alyansa sa ibang mga organisasyon sa labas ng Mindanao? So siguro pwede mo kwento yung sa Bakwit School, SOS, Lakbayan.
Sige. Translate mo naman.
Ako na magta-translate.
Sige. So ayun, hindi lang po yung mga organisasyon ay una yung sumusuporta at tumulong upang mabuo ang mga lumad schools ay ang mga taong simbahan, ang mga universities, halimbawa katulad ng University of the Philippines, ano pa ba? Kalimutan ko yung ibang school, pero yung maraming mga universidad, mga taong simbahan, mga organisasyon dito sa Kamaynilaan ang tumulong upang mabuo ang mga eskwelahan, upang maitaguyod ang mga eskwelahan. Tapos ayun, nagkaroon ng lakbayan noong simula noong 2015 para ipanawagan at ikwento sa mga tao kung ano ang kalagayan ng pambansang minorya sa buong Pilipinas. Ayun po.
All right, just to translate for Kat, she was explaining how in the first place, the Lumad schools themselves in Mindanao were made in the 1980s by people from the church, academics, activists, and of course the communities themselves. And we saw the same alliances, the same solidarity when the Bakwit School was built. Just to refresh everyone, the Bakwit School, the name Bakwit is actually a popular languaging of the word evacuate. So it means basically evacuation school. And given that their schools are being militarized in Mindanao, they had to resort to evacuation or bakwit in Metro Manila. The bakwit school itself was created during a protest. This was the Lakbayan. Lakbayan meaning sojourn or journey, wherein these different communities from Mindanao go to the capital to protest. So they want the students to continue studying, even though they don't have they don't have schools no longer. So they made this temporary school, which is a makeshift school where academics, students from outside Mindanao can volunteer to teach. So definitely there are so many alliances that give birth not only to the Lumad schools, but also to the temporary Bakwit school in Manila.
Actually, what I can say a little bit more regarding the question raised by Takeshi, that Professor Lau Kin Chi might already elaborate a bit earlier regarding the PP21 process. PP21 is referring to the People Plan for the 21st Century. It has been active in 1990s. Actually, PP21 is also provide a platform for mutual exchange of view and experiences in terms of the struggle for the development alternative and many other aspects. Actually, that is also providing the platform for developing the international or trans-border solidarity among the people who are facing the problem and support one another. So that is also the thing that you can also explore this possibility. That's why I said, well, this is the platform that we can also learn from one another. In the meantime, to provide our support or gaining support from some others. Yes, any other speaker or participant want to raise a question? Please go ahead. We still have a few more minutes to go.
Yeah, I would like to add that in
Okay.
order to how to say, to solve the problem, we have to really believe on the capacity of the community themselves, because we have long experience that the outsider people, they are trying to have some development project or try to develop in order to solve the problem, but those kind of mechanism or the method are not a sustainable way, because the community themselves are not feel that are the owner. So if I myself is the monk and I are inside the people also. So I think that if you are try to strengthen, try to build a capacity for them and let them to solve the problem by themselves, in this case will be very sustainable way. And I really believe that our traditional knowledge is some thing that we can how to say, can solve the problem also, because our knowledge we had collect and transfer for 1,000 years, and we living very close with the forest. We know how to live in the forest in the friendly and also how to live in a sustainable way. So if you believe in our knowledge, our practice, I think we can learn and living together in the peaceful way and sustainable also. So yeah, I just would like to add like this.
Yes, thank you so much, Nittaya. You also reminded us that the word indigenous people are taboo here in Thailand because the government cannot accept this term. They call the tribal instead. But there is also some sort of the discrimination backed up by the Cold War mentality, using the national security to be their shield in order to prevent the people to take part in such policy making. Okay, any other additional comment or remarks for the Southeast Asian presentation?
May I ask a question?
Yes, please, Takeshi.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I would like to ask Nittaya if there's any a way of giving like a certificate for the land-based education of your culture. I've seen it in Canada. They started a land-based education to promote knowledge, not only for the indigenous communities, but to the non-indigenous community to understand the significance of their culture.
Yeah, actually, according to the land, or the certification to the land, right?
Like an education certificate, like
okay.
if somebody gets a higher degree in the education of your culture, that they get recognized. Is there any system like that?
Actually, we would say that our knowledge are not recognized, and that's why we are forced to study the how to say the curriculum that they are developed by the people from Bangkok. We are forced to study something from Bangkok. We are not allowed to something from our community. So we try to to involve in the curriculum, to add the local curriculum in the school, but actually it's not really successful there, and we are now trying to establish the Indigenous Knowledge Management Institute here in Impact Association, in our organization also. And we believe that we can learn in every way, not only in the school, but in the community, from the knowledgeable person by themselves and from the mother, like that also. So now still in the process of develop the curriculum, and we already have our own school in the community level, and we try to register at the community learning center, and in order to get the certification from the government, but just up to the grade 6 only, but the higher is not able to get a certification. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for your answer. Is it satisfy you, Takeshi?
Yes.
Naturally,
yes.
Thailand constitution is also guarantee the alternative education, but in the meantime, we also try to suppress whatever alternative which also challenging the mainstream education. That is also still problematic, not just only being faced by the indigenous people or community,